Hello everybody, and today I'm going to give you 5 reasons you should be using Linux, because Linux is a better OS than Windows in so many different ways. Now, reason number 1 is battery life. Now, you know how Windows does a million different things in the background? Well, Linux, on the other hand, doesn't do that. It just does what you want it to and what services you run. It doesn't run a million services in the background to do crap like Windows Update like Windows does. I mean, if you're a Windows user, you've probably seen at least once where your CPU is being used by some random program or your PC's just running slow for no reason. Linux doesn't do that. Reason number 2 is updates. Now on Linux, you usually have to type in a command to update, and that's about it. Or if you have a distro that's more user-friendly or user-oriented, it will actually have an automatic updater that just runs that command. So like apt-get update, apt-get upgrade, boom, you can upgrade your Debian install. And then Arch Linux has pacman-sy, Void has xbps-su. They all have their own ways of updating it, but when you remember the command, it's as easy as running it. That's how easy it is on Linux. On Windows, you gotta wait hours for it to find the updates, and then updates push stuff you don't want, like Windows 10 upgrades. Linux doesn't do that, because Linux is an operating system for you, the user. Reason number 3 is the fact that Linux runs well on more systems. I mean, right here, I've got this good old UMPC from Fujitsu. I mean, it's only got a gig of RAM and an 800 megahertz Atom, and when I got this thing, it had Windows 8.1, and it was extremely unusable. This thing has a modern version of Linux on it, and you know what? It runs great, and it helps that I have Mate on there. And speaking of that, another reason you should use Linux is that you can use whatever desktop you want. You know how Windows has like those stupid updates or new versions that change around the desktop? Well, Linux doesn't do that, and you can use any desktop you want. You want Window Maker, which is kind of like the old Next desktop? Boom, you can use it. You want CDE, which is what old Unix's like Suns used? Boom, you can do that. You want to use the old version of GNOME? You can do that. You want to use older KDE? You can do that. You want to use something that's just as lightweight as possible? You can do that. And if you want something that literally is just titling Windows, you can do that. Does Windows let you do that? No, you have to use what Microsoft wants you to, and customization is limited. And finally, the last big reason you should use Linux is the fact that Linux is a safer and more secure OS. You see, with Windows, it's a closed source operating system, and its security model has tons of problems with it. For example, Windows, you have, it's a closed source OS, and that means that, of course, there could be some backdoors in it. And of course, Microsoft does tell vulnerabilities to the government before they tell you about them and give you a patch. And here's the other thing. Windows 10 has this feature called telemetry where they send data to Microsoft. Now, what data is this? You don't know. And sure, they tell you you can turn it off, but the thing with Windows 10 is it flips a lot of switches without telling you. And you don't know if the switch that turns off data collection is about as functional as those switches at crossings, where you push them to cross the road and it does nothing. That might be what these switches are, and you can't tell because you do not have the source code to Windows 10, and neither does anybody else but Microsoft. And maybe somebody else if they sign some NDA and do all that crap, but that's the thing with Windows. You can't really trust it. With Linux, you can trust it because it's free software, it's free and open source. So what are you waiting for? Switch to Linux already. And one more thing about Linux, did I mention if your laptop's running hot, Linux will make your laptop run cooler? That's all that needs to be said. Switch to Linux today.